Chapter 21, The Forge Boardwalk. Please don't forget to like and share the video, and subscribe to the channel. Thank you.
Later that evening, Brandon and Keke met up on the boardwalk at the Forge. In a surprising twist, Brandon was on time, while Keke arrived about 10 minutes late. She apologized repeatedly, explaining that parking had been a challenge. Brandon reassured her that it was no big deal, trying to ease her perfectionist tendencies. As they strolled along the boardwalk, Keke talked about her work with students, and Brandon chimed in with his sister Zuri's experiences in teaching. Their conversation flowed naturally, and they decided to stop by Tammy's Tea Bar. They sat down, sipped their drinks, and continued chatting. Brandon learned that Keke was originally from Hartford, Connecticut. She and her father had moved to Virginia after her mother passed away from heart disease. Keke had attended Norfolk State University, and her dad worked for the police department. In return, Brandon shared his own story, mentioning his transition from living independently to moving back home, though he framed it as a practical decision to save money. After a couple of hours of conversation, Brandon walked Keke to her car before heading home himself. As Brandon sat at a stoplight, he began reflecting on his day. He felt a deep sense of fulfillment after talking with some of the students at the school, as if he was genuinely making a difference in their lives. This feeling was different from his usual craving for attention on Instagram or partying with his friends. It felt like a sign of maturing. He also enjoyed his conversation with Keke, sensing that she was more disciplined than the people he usually spent time with, but in a refreshing way. To his surprise, they shared a love for the same music, and he was even more shocked to learn that she played video games. He could see the potential for a meaningful friendship with her. Reflecting on the day, Brandon felt a sense of substance and satisfaction, knowing that he had experienced a truly good day. When Brandon arrived home, he found his parents still up, sitting together in the kitchen nook. His mother quietly asked how his presentation went. Brandon, feeling upbeat, happily replied that it had gone well. His father smiled softly in response. As Brandon opened the refrigerator, he noticed a dinner plate prepared for him. He placed it in the microwave to reheat, and while waiting for the beeping, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off with his parents. Glancing at his watch, he checked to see if he had made it home by the agreed time. It was only 9:45 p.m. When the microwave beeped, Brandon retrieved his plate and sat at the kitchen island, looking toward his parents. His mother stood up and handed him a napkin, placing it beside his plate. Brandon took a few bites before setting his fork down on the napkin. He looked at his parents and asked if everything was okay. They exchanged a glance before his father gently informed him that his friend Junior had passed away a few hours ago. Brandon wasn't surprised, but he was disappointed. When he had visited Junior, he noticed that he didn't look well, though he had still hoped and prayed for a miracle. After hearing the news, he told his parents he was sorry to hear about Junior's passing and asked them to convey his condolences to Mr. George. Unfortunately, Harold hadn't spoken to George since the accident. He only learned about Junior's death from George's next-door neighbor during a walk around the neighborhood. George had been staying with his sister, Kate. The three of them, Brandon and his parents, reflected on Aunt Kate, who had been a refuge not only for George but also for Junior. After George's wife, Jill, passed away, Junior would often spend days with his Aunt Kate. After finishing his meal, Brandon scraped his plate, washed it, and placed it in the dishwasher. He tidied up his spot at the kitchen island, then told his parents to let him know when they hear about the funeral arrangements. He said goodnight and went to his room. Sitting on his bed, Brandon scrolled through his list of friends on his cell phone. He decided to text one of his female friends he often hung out with, and she responded quickly. Early in the conversation, he mentioned the passing of his friend. She sympathized briefly before asking if he wanted to hang out. Brandon vacillated whether to go out or stay in. He appreciated the offer but declined, saying he would talk to her later. He put his phone down on the bed and began going through the box of props he had used in the high school presentation. determining what he needed to return back to his work office. Afterward, he decided to take a shower and get ready for bed. When he returned to his room, he impulsively picked up his phone and called his new friend, Keke. As the phone rang, he wondered if it was too late to be calling her, considering they didn't know each other well yet. She answered in a somewhat groggy tone, and he asked if she had been asleep. He wanted to check if she had made it home safely. Keke assured him she was fine and asked how he was doing since she sensed something in his voice. Brandon explained that a friend of his had passed away. Keke inquired about how he knew the friend, and he went into detail, even sharing how his friend had died and the unbelievable allegations that it wasn't an accident. Keke listened attentively, offering her support, telling him to think of the good times he had with his friend. After she felt he was okay, they said their goodnights and ended the call. The next morning, many neighbors had gathered outside near George's house. Harold and Gloria, out for their usual walk around the neighborhood, joined the crowd. Most of the neighbors were just learning that George's son, Junior, had passed away. Interestingly, caution tape from the police still hung on George's doors, indicating he had not yet returned home since the accident. Various neighbors shared what little information they had about funeral arrangements and the incident itself. George's next-door neighbor mentioned that the police had requested his ring camera footage the day after the incident, but there hadn't been much news since. As they talked, many neighbors inferred that George had been dealing with a lot since his wife's death and understood why he might want to avoid the house where the accident occurred. Some suggested lighting a candle in Junior's honor, while others gathered in a circle to pray. In George's absence, the diverse community came together to support each other as best they could. After a while, Harold and Gloria realized they needed to get back home as Thado would be arriving soon. By the time the grandparents walked back to their house, Thado was sitting on the porch, waiting. Their grandson's upbeat greeting was just what the pair needed to see. Thado, oblivious to what his grandparents were feeling about their neighbor's passing, pressed his grandpa to find a beat he could use so he could hand in his extra credit by next week. Pop assured Thado he would have it by then.
Do you think Brandon's decision to call Keke late at night, despite their relatively new friendship, was appropriate? Why or why not?
As always, I would love to hear your comments below. Please don't forget to like and share the video. Be sure to hit the notification button to be notified of the next video. Thank you.